The wind was building to a significant gust. Elena could see it in the way the grass bent at the 800-meter mark, the subtle shift in heat distortion patterns, and the barely perceptible change in the sound quality across the valley. The ballistic computer wouldn't register this change for another 30 seconds, but Elena could feel it coming like a weather-sensitive joint predicting rain. She made the manual adjustments to the scope's windage, compensating for conditions that hadn't yet reached the rifle, but would arrive just as her bullet passed through the midpoint of its trajectory. Dr. Chen watched the process with fascination, taking notes on Elena's integration of technological assistance with traditional fieldcraft. "Target acquired," Elena announced, her voice carrying the calm certainty of a professional at work. The distant target resolved in the scope's view, a precise geometric shape that seemed impossibly small across 2,400 meters of Montana wilderness. The shot sequence began with Elena's breathing, the deep, controlled rhythm that would synchronize her body's natural movement with the rifle's stability. Her heart rate slowed to the steady cadence she had learned to achieve under stress, each beat timed to the precise moment between breaths when her body was most still. Colonel Morrison watched through the spotting scope while Dr. Chen monitored the ballistic computer's readings. Rodriguez provided backup observation through a secondary scope, his professional attention focused entirely on the technical aspects of the shot rather than any personal considerations about being replaced in the demonstration. Elena's finger found the trigger with the gentle pressure of long familiarity. The rifle had a clean, crisp breakpoint that spoke of expert gunsmithing and careful maintenance. She applied pressure gradually, letting the shot break naturally rather than forcing it, waiting for that perfect moment when breathing, pulse, and environmental conditions aligned. The rifle spoke with a sharp crack that echoed across the valley, followed immediately by the supersonic crack of the bullet's passage. Elena remained motionless behind the scope, tracking the bullet's flight through the thermal imaging system. At extreme range, even a perfect shot took several seconds to reach its target, time enough for doubt and second-guessing to creep in. But Elena felt only the quiet confidence that came from knowing she had executed every aspect of the shot correctly. The environmental compensation had been accurate, the ballistic calculations properly adjusted for real-time conditions, and the mechanical execution as close to perfect as human limitations allowed. "Impact," Rodriguez called out from the spotting scope. "Center mass. Perfect hit." The announcement was followed by a moment of stunned silence as the implications sunk in. Elena had just demonstrated shooting capability that exceeded anything the assembled officers had expected from someone assigned to kitchen duty. More than that, she had seamlessly integrated advanced technological assistance with traditional marksmanship skills, showcasing both human competence and equipment potential. Dr. Chen was the first to break the silence. "Outstanding. That was exactly the kind of performance we need to demonstrate this system's operational potential." She looked at Elena with new respect. "Have you worked with integrated ballistic computers before?" "No, ma'am. This was my first time with this level of technological assistance." The admission made Elena's performance even more impressive. She had adapted to unfamiliar equipment, compensated for its limitations, and delivered a perfect shot under pressure with no previous experience with the system. It was the kind of natural shooting ability that couldn't be taught or replicated through training alone. Colonel Morrison lowered his spotting scope, his expression thoughtful. "Private Vasquez, that was exceptional shooting under challenging conditions."
But before Elena could respond, Mills stepped forward with barely contained anger. "Sir, I request permission to speak privately about this soldier's disciplinary status and the appropriateness of using her for high-visibility demonstrations." The request was professionally phrased, but carried an undertone of threat that everyone present recognized. Mills was clearly preparing to escalate his objections through official channels, potentially creating significant problems for everyone involved in the decision to let Elena shoot. Elena felt the familiar sinking sensation as bureaucratic reality intruded on tactical success. She had just proven her competence beyond any reasonable doubt, but institutional politics were about to reassert their dominance over merit-based evaluation. Dr. Chen, however, had different priorities. "Colonel Morrison, I need to include this demonstration in my report to the Pentagon. The equipment performed flawlessly, but more importantly, we've identified a soldier with exceptional long-range capabilities. Given the nature of threat situation described in your flash message, shouldn't we be discussing how to best utilize this asset rather than administrative concerns?" The question reframed the entire situation from a disciplinary matter to a tactical opportunity. Elena could see Morrison weighing the competing priorities: institutional harmony versus operational effectiveness, bureaucratic compliance versus mission success. But before Morrison could respond, Lieutenant Peters received another message on his radio that would change everything once again. His face paled as he listened to the urgent transmission, and Elena could see disaster approaching like a storm front across a clear sky. "Sir," Peters said, his voice tight with controlled urgency, "Northcom reports active hostile contact. The threat has escalated from assessment to engagement. They're requesting immediate deployment of our best long-range assets." The training exercise had just become a real mission, and Elena realized that her demonstration shot might have been an audition for something far more serious than equipment testing. The political complications of using a soldier assigned to kitchen duty were about to collide with the practical necessity of deploying the best available resources to meet an active threat. Morrison's expression shifted to full command mode as the situation crystallized around tactical necessities rather than administrative concerns. "What's the nature of hostile contact?" Peters consulted his message traffic quickly. "Enemy sniper team engaging our forward positions from extreme range. Initial estimates suggest capability beyond 2,000 meters. Conventional countermeasures have been ineffective. Northcom is requesting immediate deployment of advanced long-range capability for neutralization." Elena's pulse quickened as she realized the implications. This wasn't about demonstration anymore. It was about real bullets, real threats, and real consequences for failure. Someone was shooting at American soldiers from distances that required exactly the kind of skills she had just demonstrated. Dr. Chen stepped forward with decisive authority. "Colonel, this equipment was designed specifically for this type of threat engagement. The thermal imaging and ballistic computer integration provide capabilities that exceed traditional sniper systems by orders of magnitude." "And the shooter?" Morrison looked directly at Elena. "Private Vasquez, are you prepared for live-fire engagement against hostile forces?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena had just proven her shooting ability, but combat engagement was different from demonstration shooting. It required not just technical skill, but the mental toughness to take human life, the tactical awareness to operate under hostile conditions, and the moral certainty to pull the trigger when lives depended on accuracy. Elena met Morrison's gaze with steady confidence. "Yes, sir." Mills started to object again, but Morrison cut him off with a gesture. "Sergeant Mills, operational requirements override administrative considerations. Private Vasquez will deploy with the advanced equipment for threat neutralization."
The decision was made with the crisp finality of military command under pressure. Elena had gone from kitchen duty to active mission deployment in the space of 30 minutes, proving that competence could still overcome bureaucracy when lives were at stake. But as the group began preparing for immediate deployment, Elena caught sight of Mills's expression and realized that her victory might be temporary. The kitchen supervisor's face carried the promise of future retribution.
the kind of institutional payback that would come after the immediate crisis passed and attention returned to normal disciplinary procedures. For now, though, Elena was a soldier again, preparing for a mission that would test every skill she had spent years developing. The demonstration had become reality, and the distant target was no longer a geometric shape, but a threat to American lives that only she had proven capable of neutralizing. As equipment was loaded and vehicles prepared, Elena felt the familiar transformation that came with mission focus. The personal politics and bureaucratic complications faded into background noise as her professional consciousness emerged. Someone was threatening her fellow soldiers from extreme range, and she had both the skills and the equipment necessary to stop them. The question was whether she could perform under combat conditions as well as she had during the demonstration, and whether her success would finally earn her the recognition she had spent 8 months believing she would never receive again. The second vehicle's arrival shattered the demonstration's carefully orchestrated calm like a stone through glass. Elena watched from her position at the coffee station as Colonel Morrison's aide, Lieutenant Peters, emerged from the passenger seat at a pace that spoke of urgent news. His normally perfect uniform was wrinkled, his face flushed with the kind of excitement that meant either very good news or very bad trouble. Elena had learned to read the subtle signs of military hierarchy during her months in exile. The way Peters approached Morrison, directly, without the usual ceremonial deference, suggested this interruption carried authority from someone higher up the chain of command than anyone currently present at Range 7. "Sir," Peters said, his voice low but urgent, as he handed Morrison a sealed envelope. "Flash message from Northcom. Priority Alpha." The color drained from Morrison's face as he read the contents. Elena couldn't see the specifics, but she could read body language fluently after years of military service. Morrison's shoulders tensed, his jaw tightened, and his eyes swept the assembled group with the calculating look of a commander suddenly facing an unexpected mission. Dr. Chen stepped closer, her civilian status giving her a directness that the military personnel couldn't match. "Colonel, if there's a security issue, we can postpone the demonstration." "No postponement," Morrison said, refolding the message with sharp, precise movements. In fact, the demonstration just became significantly more important. He looked around the group, his gaze lingering on Rodriguez and the other selected rangers. "We have a developing situation. Hostile forces have been identified at extreme range, beyond our current operational capabilities. This equipment demonstration isn't just showing off Pentagon toys anymore. It's proving a concept for an active threat." Elena's coffee pot trembled slightly in her hands. In all her months of kitchen duty, she had never seen Morrison this focused, this razor-sharp with purpose. The casual atmosphere of a technology showcase had transformed into something approaching a mission briefing. "How extreme are we talking?" Rodriguez asked, his voice steady but concerned. Morrison consulted the message again. "Initial reports suggest targets at ranges exceeding 2,500 meters, possibly further." He looked directly at Dr. Chen. "Doctor, I need to know if your equipment can handle real-world applications at those distances under current atmospheric conditions." Elena's mind raced. 2,500 meters was at the very edge of what most military shooters considered possible, even with the best equipment. It required not just steady hands and good eyes, but a deep understanding of ballistics, atmospheric conditions, and a dozen variables that could turn a perfect shot into a complete miss. She had made shots like that before, but only after years of training and countless hours of practice.
Dr. Chen nodded confidently. "The equipment is rated for effective target engagement out to 3,000 meters under ideal conditions. Today's conditions aren't ideal, but they're well within operational parameters." "And our shooters?" Morrison's question hung in the air like a challenge. Rodriguez straightened, his pride evident despite his uncertainty. "I can make the shot, sir." Elena watched Rodriguez's face and saw something she recognized from her own mirror, the look of someone trying to convince themselves as much as others. Rodriguez was a good soldier and a competent marksman, but extreme long-range shooting was as much art as science. It required an intuitive understanding of ballistics that couldn't be taught in classrooms or learned from manuals.
As the group huddled around the rifle, Elena found herself analyzing the tactical situation with the automatic precision of her training. The wind had continued to shift, now coming from the west at 14 miles per hour with gusts that could spike to 22. The temperature was dropping steadily ahead of the approaching storm system, which would affect bullet velocity and trajectory. Most critically, the atmospheric pressure was falling rapidly, a factor that most shooters never learned to calculate properly. Elena had learned to read weather patterns during long hours alone on shooting ranges, back when she believed that mastering every variable would make her indispensable to her unit. She understood that the equipment Dr. Chen was demonstrating could compensate for many factors, but only if the shooter understood how to integrate that technological assistance with fundamental marksmanship skills. Rodriguez settled behind the rifle, his movements professional, but lacking the fluid confidence Elena associated with truly exceptional shooters. She had trained with enough elite marksmen to recognize the difference between competence and mastery, and what she was seeing fell into the first category. Dr. Chen activated the scope's advanced features, explaining the digital displays and computational aids while Rodriguez nodded along. Elena could see the thermal imaging overlay, the ballistic computer's calculations, and the wind compensation indicators from her position 40 feet away. The technology was impressive, but she also noticed that the wind speed reading was lagging behind the actual conditions by several seconds, a delay that could prove critical at extreme range. "Target acquisition confirmed," Rodriguez announced, his voice carrying across the range with military precision. "Engaging at 2,400 meters." Elena's hands clenched involuntarily. She could see what Rodriguez couldn't, that the scope's environmental sensors were reading conditions from 30 seconds ago, not the current wind pattern that was gusting unpredictably across the valley. The ballistic computer was calculating a perfect solution for weather that no longer existed. She looked desperately around the group, hoping someone else would notice the discrepancy, but the officers were focused on the ceremonial aspects of the demonstration rather than the technical details. Dr. Chen was explaining the scope's features to Colonel Morrison, both of them watching the digital displays rather than the actual environmental conditions. Elena had spent years learning to read wind patterns by watching grass movement, dust clouds, and the subtle way heat shimmer danced across long distances. These were skills that no computer could replicate, intuitive knowledge that came only from thousands of hours of practice. She could see the wind shift building to a strong gust just as Rodriguez was preparing to fire, a condition that would push even a perfectly aimed bullet several feet off target at 2,400 meters. The internal struggle that had been building all morning reached a crescendo. Elena knew she could make this shot. More than that, she knew she was probably the only person currently at range 7 who could consistently hit targets at this distance under these conditions. But speaking up would mean revealing the depth of her knowledge, potentially creating exactly the kind of scene that had gotten her assigned to kitchen duty in the first place. 8 months ago, Elena had been removed from active duty after what command had termed an incident of insubordination. The reality had been more complex. She had questioned a mission plan that she believed was tactically unsound, offering an alternative approach that would have reduced risk to her unit while achieving the same objectives. Her suggestions had been technically correct and tactically superior, but they had also contradicted the plan developed by her commanding officer, a man with 15 years of experience and a fragile ego. The confrontation that followed had been professional on Elena's part and personal on his. When the mission proceeded as originally planned and resulted in unnecessary casualties, Elena had been proven right, but in a way that made her superiors look incompetent. Rather than acknowledge her tactical insights, Command had decided she was a troublemaker who needed to learn proper respect for authority. Kitchen duty was supposed to teach her humility and the importance of following orders without question. Instead, it had given her 8 months to think about the difference between real leadership and bureaucratic authority, between genuine competence and institutional politics. Now, watching Rodriguez prepared to take a shot that she knew would fail, Elena faced the same choice that had defined her military career. She could stay silent, keep her head down, and watch a demonstration fail because she chose compliance over competence. Or she could speak up, risk everything she had left, and try to prevent an embarrassment that could have real consequences for everyone involved. The wind gusted again, stronger this time, and Elena made her decision. She walked directly toward Colonel Morrison, her movement purposeful enough to cut through the group's focus on Rodriguez. Every eye turned to her, including those of Dr. Chen and the assembled officers. Elena could feel the weight of their attention like a physical presence, the mixture of surprise and disapproval that came from a kitchen worker interrupting a high-level demonstration. "Sir," Elena said, her voice steady despite the thundering of her pulse, "I need to report an environmental hazard that could affect the demonstration." Morrison's eyebrows rose, but his expression remained professional. "Speak." "The wind pattern has shifted significantly in the last 5 minutes. The scope's environmental sensors are reading delayed data that doesn't match current conditions. At 2,400 meters, the lag time could result in a miss of several feet." The group fell silent, the kind of quiet that comes before either vindication or disaster. Elena could feel Rodriguez's eyes on her, along with those of every officer present. She had just publicly suggested that the demonstration was about to fail because the professionals hadn't noticed something she had observed from the coffee station. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her expression curious rather than defensive. "You understand ballistic compensation calculations?" "Yes, ma'am." Elena kept her response brief, knowing that elaborating would only dig her deeper into dangerous territory. Morrison looked from Elena to Rodriguez to the scope display, his mind clearly working through the implications. "Sergeant Rodriguez, what's your read on current wind conditions?" Rodriguez hesitated, caught between his training and his pride. Elena could see him processing what she had said, comparing it to his own observations. After a moment, he nodded reluctantly. "The wind does seem to be gusting more than the scope indicates, sir." Dr. Chen moved to the spotting scope, making her own assessment of the environmental conditions. After several seconds of observation, she looked up with an expression of professional interest. "She's right. The sensors are lagging behind actual conditions by approximately 30 to 40 seconds. At extreme range, that delay could definitely impact accuracy." The admission hung in the air like a revelation. Elena had been right, and everyone present now knew it. The question was, what happened next? Would she be thanked for preventing an embarrassing failure, or punished for overstepping her place in the military hierarchy? Colonel Morrison studied Elena with the intense focus of a commander reassessing a previously dismissed asset. "Private Vasquez, isn't it? Kitchen duty for the past 8 months?" "Yes, sir." "And you learned ballistic calculations in kitchen training?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "No, sir. I learned them during ranger training before my reassignment." The words carried weight that everyone present understood. Elena wasn't just kitchen help who had gotten lucky with a guess. She was a trained ranger who had been sidelined for reasons that suddenly seemed less clear-cut than they had moments before. Morrison turned to Dr. Chen. "Doctor, we need this demonstration to succeed. If the environmental conditions are too challenging for our current setup, what are our options?" Dr. Chen consulted her tablet, running calculations that Elena could have done in her head. "We can recalibrate the sensors for real-time readings, but that will take 15 to 20 minutes. Or what? We use a shooter who can make the necessary adjustments intuitively, someone who understands environmental factors well enough to work with the equipment's limitations rather than against them. The implication was clear, and Elena felt the moment crystallizing around her, like a photograph being developed. Every person at Range 7 was now looking at her with new understanding. She wasn't just kitchen worker who had noticed a technical problem. She was a trained ranger who had been sidelined for reasons that suddenly seemed less clear-cut than they had moments before. Rodriguez stepped back from the rifle, his movement graceful despite the situation's awkwardness. "Sir, if Private Vasquez has the training to make this shot, maybe we should consider letting her try." The offer was generous, coming from a man who had every right to be defensive about being corrected by someone assigned to kitchen duty. Elena felt a surge of respect for Rodriguez's professionalism and secure confidence in his own abilities. Morrison looked around the group, clearly weighing the political implications against the practical necessities. Elena could see the calculation in his eyes. Was it worth potentially embarrassing his original choice of shooter to ensure the demonstration's success? More importantly, was he prepared to acknowledge that his kitchen worker might be more qualified for this mission than his selected rangers? The decision would reveal as much about Morrison's leadership as Elena's shooting, and everyone present understood the stakes involved. The tension at Range 7 stretched like a wire about to snap as Colonel Morrison weighed his options. Elena could feel the invisible currents of military politics swirling around her. The need to maintain face, the pressure of Pentagon oversight, and the simple human resistance to admitting that previous judgments might not have been entirely fair or accurate. "Private Vasquez," Morrison said finally, his voice carefully neutral. "Step forward." Elena moved toward the shooting platform, acutely aware that every eye was tracking her movement. After 8 months of invisibility, being the center of attention felt surreal, like stepping from shadow into blazing sunlight. Her hands remained steady, but she could feel her pulse quickening with the familiar pre-mission focus that she hadn't experienced in far too long. Dr. Chen handed her a tablet displaying the scope's technical specifications. The ballistic computer can handle most of the mathematical heavy lifting, but it needs accurate environmental input. Can you provide real-time wind and atmospheric readings?
Elena scanned the data quickly, her mind automatically processing the technical details. "Yes, ma'am. The sensors are accurate for measurement, but the lag time means manual correction is necessary for dynamic conditions." "And you can make those corrections?" "I can make the shot." The simple confidence in Elena's voice seemed to surprise everyone present, including Elena herself. 8 months of self-doubt and institutional dismissal hadn't erased the fundamental certainty that came from years of training and natural ability. When it came to long-range shooting, Elena knew exactly who she was and what she could do. Morrison gestured toward the rifle. "Show us." As Elena approached the weapon, she felt a familiar transformation beginning. The political complexities and personal grudges faded into background noise as her shooter's consciousness emerged. Her breathing automatically deepened and slowed. Her vision seemed to sharpen, taking in details that had been invisible moments before. The rifle became an extension of her body, as natural as her own hands. But before she could settle into position, Sergeant Mills's voice cut across the range like a lash. "Sir, I object to this demonstration." Every head turned toward the kitchen supervisor, who had approached the group with the determined stride of a man about to make a very public mistake. Mills's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment, his career-long authority suddenly challenged by his own subordinate's competence. "Private Vasquez is assigned to kitchen duty for disciplinary reasons," Mills continued, his voice carrying across the range. "She's not qualified for active duty assignments, and using her for this demonstration sends the wrong message about military discipline and proper chain of command." Elena felt the familiar sinking sensation that came with watching her opportunities disappear due to institutional politics. Mills wasn't wrong about the regulations. She was officially assigned to kitchen duty, and participating in a live-fire demonstration could be seen as exceeding her current authorization. Colonel Morrison's expression hardened at the public challenge to his authority. Military protocol demanded that he consider Mills's objection, even if doing so undermined the demonstration's success. Elena could see the calculation playing across his features. Was supporting her worth the potential disciplinary complications? But Dr. Chen stepped forward before Morrison could respond. Sergeant Mills, what specific regulations prohibit a soldier from demonstrating technical competence regardless of current duty assignment? Mills's confidence faltered slightly under the direct question. Well, ma'am, it's a matter of proper procedure. I'm not asking about procedure. I'm asking about regulations. Dr. Chen's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to cutting through bureaucratic nonsense to reach practical solutions. Is Private Vasquez prohibited by military law from firing a weapon in a controlled demonstration? The question hung in the air while Mills searched for a regulation that didn't exist. Elena was still a qualified soldier, still trained and certified for weapons use. Her assignment to kitchen duty was disciplinary, not a declaration of incompetence or safety risk. Rodriguez spoke up from his position near the spotting scope. Sir, with respect to Sergeant Mills, we're facing a potential tactical situation that requires maximum effectiveness. If Private Vasquez has the skills to ensure mission success, shouldn't that take priority over administrative concerns?
Elena felt a surge of gratitude toward Rodriguez for his continued support. It would have been easy for him to remain silent, avoiding any appearance of endorsing someone who had essentially replaced him in the demonstration. Instead, he was putting mission success ahead of personal pride. But Mills wasn't ready to concede defeat. This sets a dangerous precedent, sir. Soldiers assigned to disciplinary duty shouldn't be rewarded with high-profile opportunities. It undermines the entire disciplinary system. The argument struck at the heart of military culture, the balance between merit and hierarchy, between competence and compliance. Elena understood that Mills was fighting for more than just his authority over one soldier. He was defending a system that relied on clear chains of command and consistent enforcement of discipline. Lieutenant Peters, who had been observing the exchange with growing discomfort, cleared his throat. Sir, the flash message from Northcom indicated time sensitivity on the threat assessment. Should we prioritize immediate tactical requirements over administrative procedures? Morrison looked from Mills to Elena to the assembled officers, clearly weighing factors that went far beyond a simple shooting demonstration. Elena could see the complexity of his position. Supporting her might solve the immediate tactical problem while creating longer-term disciplinary issues. But failing to use her skills might result in a failed demonstration and inadequate response to a real threat. Dr. Chen checked her watch with visible impatience. Colonel, I need to report back to the Pentagon on this equipment's operational capabilities within the next 2 hours. If we're going to conduct an effective demonstration, we need to proceed with the most qualified shooter available. The external pressure seemed to crystallize Morrison's decision. He looked directly at Elena, his expression shifting from bureaucratic caution to command determination. Private Vasquez, you will conduct the demonstration shooting. Sergeant Mills, your objections are noted for the record. Mills's face darkened with barely contained fury. Elena could see that she had just made a powerful enemy, someone who would remember this moment long after the demonstration ended. The kitchen supervisor's authority had been publicly challenged and overruled, a humiliation that would require payback. But Elena's focus was already shifting to the rifle and the distant target. Political consequences were tomorrow's problem. The shot was today's opportunity. She settled behind the weapon with the fluid grace of countless hours of practice, feeling the familiar weight and balance that spoke of precision engineering. The scope's view revealed a world of technical detail that took her breath away. The thermal imaging overlay showed heat signatures and atmospheric disturbances invisible to the naked eye. The ballistic computer displayed real-time calculations for trajectory, wind compensation, and atmospheric correction. It was like having a supercomputer integrated with traditional marksmanship, technology that could turn a good shooter into a legendary one. But Elena also noticed the system's limitations. The environmental sensors were indeed lagging behind actual conditions, just as she had observed. The ballistic computer was calculating solutions based on atmospheric data that was 30 to 40 seconds old, significant enough to matter at extreme range. She closed her eyes briefly, extending her senses beyond the technological inputs. Elena had learned to read environmental conditions through subtle cues that no sensor could detect. The way grass moved in the valley, the behavior of dust clouds, the quality of heat shimmer at different distances. These were skills developed through thousands of hours of practice, intuitive knowledge that complemented rather than competed with technological assistance. The helicopter's rotors cut through the Montana air with rhythmic precision, as Elena sat strapped into military transport heading toward a forward operating base 40 miles north of Fort McKenzie. The advanced rifle system was secured beside her, its technological complexity a stark contrast to the utilitarian interior of the Blackhawk. Through the aircraft's windows, she could see the landscape rolling past in shades of amber and green, deceptively peaceful despite the urgent mission that had pulled her from kitchen duty into active combat deployment. Dr. Chen sat across from Elena, her laptop open as she monitored real-time intelligence feeds from the engagement zone. Colonel Morrison occupied the seat next to her, his command especially grim as the information came in.
Presence filling the cramped space as he coordinated with multiple agencies through his secure communication system. The transformation from demonstration to active mission had required mobilizing resources across 3 military districts, and Elena found herself at the center of an operation that involved far more than a single sniper engagement. Intelligence update. Morrison announced over the helicopter's intercom. We have positive identification of the hostile sniper team. 2 individuals, highly trained, engaging our forward positions from a concealed location approximately 2,800 meters from friendly forces. Elena's mind automatically began calculating the tactical requirements for such a shot. 2,800 meters was beyond the effective range of most military rifles, requiring exceptional skill, perfect equipment, and ideal environmental conditions. The fact that enemy forces were successfully engaging American soldiers at that distance suggested professional training and advanced equipment. Dr. Chen looked up from her laptop with information that made Elena's blood run cold. Colonel, the ballistic analysis of enemy fire suggests they're using technology comparable to what we're deploying. This isn't just a skilled sniper team. They have access to advanced targeting systems. The implications hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Elena was being deployed not just against skilled adversaries, but against enemies who might have access to the same technological advantages she would be using. The mission had just transformed from a demonstration of superior capability to a direct competition between equally matched systems. Lieutenant Peters, who had insisted on accompanying the deployment despite his administrative role, leaned forward with additional intelligence. Sir, preliminary analysis suggests the hostile team may have been specifically positioned to test our response capabilities. The location, timing, and tactical approach suggest this might be more than a random engagement. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the helicopter's altitude. The idea that she might be walking into a trap, that her demonstration at range 7 might have been observed and anticipated, added layers of complexity to what she had initially thought would be a straightforward shooting mission. Morrison's expression hardened as he processed the intelligence. Are you suggesting our response was anticipated? It's possible, sir. The enemy position was established with clear sightlines to multiple approach routes, suggesting they expected counter-sniper deployment. They may have intelligence about our advanced equipment capabilities. Dr. Chen closed her laptop with a snap that spoke of serious concern. If hostile forces have comparable technology and advanced knowledge of our response protocols, this engagement becomes significantly more challenging. Elena realized that her role in the mission had just evolved again. She wasn't just demonstrating equipment or neutralizing a threat. She was potentially walking into a contest of skills and technology where failure could provide enemy forces with detailed intelligence about American capabilities. The helicopter began its descent toward the forward operating base, a collection of temporary structures and defensive positions that had been established to coordinate the response to the sniper threat. Elena could see soldiers moving with the urgent precision of troops under active fire, their movements coordinated but tense. As they touched down, Elena was immediately struck by the sound of distant rifle fire, the sharp crack of high-velocity rounds passing overhead, followed by the impact explosions of bullets striking defensive positions. The enemy sniper team was actively engaging American forces, using their extreme range advantage to harass and pin down soldiers who couldn't effectively return fire. Major Sarah Williams, the forward operating base commander, met them at the landing zone with a situation briefing that confirmed Elena's worst fears. Williams was a combat veteran with multiple deployments, her calm competence evident despite the ongoing hostile fire. She led them quickly toward a command bunker while explaining the tactical situation.
An enemy sniper team established position approximately 4 hours ago, Williams reported as they moved. They've been engaging our positions with precision fire at ranges beyond our effective counter-battery capability. We've attempted standard suppression tactics, but they're positioned in terrain that provides natural cover from indirect fire. Elena could hear the frustration in Williams's voice. The Major was dealing with an enemy that could strike American forces while remaining essentially immune to retaliation. It was the kind of tactical nightmare that kept military commanders awake at night. "Casualties?" Morrison asked. 3 wounded, no fatalities so far, but they're effectively penning down an entire company, preventing any movement in the northern sector. Williams gestured toward a tactical display showing the engagement area. "We need to neutralize this threat before they inflict serious casualties, or demonstrate that our forces can be held hostage by a 2-person sniper team." Elena studied the tactical map, automatically analyzing sightlines, terrain features, and potential approach routes. The enemy position was tactically sound: elevated terrain with natural cover, multiple escape routes, and clear fields of fire across approaches that friendly forces might use. Whoever had selected the location understood both the terrain and American tactical doctrine. Chen began setting up her monitoring equipment while Elena familiarized herself with the specific environmental conditions at the forward operating base. The wind patterns were different from range 7, the altitude was 300 feet higher, and the atmospheric pressure was continuing to drop as the storm system approached. All factors that would affect long-range shooting accuracy. But as Elena prepared for the mission, Williams provided intelligence that changed everything about the tactical situation. "Private Vasquez, there's something else you need to know about this engagement." Elena looked up from her equipment preparation, sensing from Williams's tone that she was about to learn something significant. "The enemy sniper team isn't just randomly harassing our positions. They're specifically targeting anyone who appears to be setting up counter-sniper operations. Every time we've attempted to establish a long-range shooting position, they've immediately shifted fire to that location." The revelation hit Elena like a physical blow. The enemy team wasn't just engaging American forces, they were actively hunting for anyone with the skills and equipment to challenge them. They were waiting for exactly the kind of mission Elena was about to undertake. Morrison stepped forward with a direct question that everyone was thinking. "Are you saying they're specifically waiting for our counter-sniper response?" "That's exactly what I'm saying, sir. This feels like a deliberate provocation designed to draw out our advanced capabilities." Williams looked directly at Elena. "Private Vasquez, you need to understand that the moment you establish a shooting position, you become their primary target." Elena felt the weight of the tactical situation settling around her like armor. She wasn't just facing a challenging long-range shot. She was walking into a direct confrontation with enemies who had been preparing specifically for her arrival. The demonstration at Range 7 had proven her shooting ability, but this mission would test everything else: her tactical awareness, her ability to operate under hostile fire, and her mental toughness when facing adversaries who were actively trying to kill her. Dr. Chen finished her equipment setup and provided Elena with the most advanced targeting system available to American forces.
The scope's capabilities were even more impressive in combat configuration. With real-time satellite imagery, ballistic computers that could calculate solutions faster than human thought, and thermal imaging that could detect targets through natural camouflage. But Elena also understood that her enemies might have access to comparable technology. The tactical advantage would come not from superior equipment, but from superior skill, training, and tactical awareness. This would be a contest between professional shooters using comparable tools, decided by intangible factors like nerve, experience, and the ability to perform under extreme pressure. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. As Elena prepared to move toward the engagement area, she realized that her entire military career had been leading toward this moment. 8 months of kitchen duty, years of training, and a lifetime of developing shooting skills had all converged on a single mission that would define not just her immediate future, but her understanding of who she was as a soldier. Morrison gave her final mission briefing with the crisp authority of command under pressure. Private Vasquez, your mission is to locate and neutralize the hostile sniper team. You have complete tactical autonomy for approach and engagement. Dr. Chen will provide technical support, but all tactical decisions are yours. Elena nodded, feeling the familiar transformation that came with mission responsibility. The personal politics and institutional complications faded into irrelevance as her professional consciousness emerged. Someone was threatening American soldiers, and she had both the skills and the equipment necessary to stop them. But as she moved toward the engagement area, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was about more than neutralizing a sniper threat. The tactical sophistication of the enemy position, the specific targeting of counter-sniper operations, and the advanced equipment capabilities suggested she was walking into a test of American military capabilities. The question was whether she was the hunter or the hunted, and whether her success at Range 7 had prepared her for a mission where failure could cost not just her own life, but provide valuable intelligence to enemies who seemed to understand American capabilities better than they should. The distant sound of enemy rifle fire continued as Elena moved toward her destiny. Each shot a reminder that somewhere in the Montana wilderness, professional killers were waiting for her with the patience and skill of predators who had chosen their ground carefully. Elena moved through the Montana wilderness with the silent precision of a predator stalking prey, every sense heightened to the razor edge that separated life from death in combat. The advanced rifle system felt like an extension of her body as she navigated terrain that provided natural concealment while offering sightlines to the suspected enemy position. Behind her, Dr. Chen maintained communication through a tactical headset, providing real-time intelligence updates and technical support that transformed Elena from a lone shooter into the tip of a technological spear. The enemy sniper team had chosen their position with the skill of professionals who understood both ballistics and psychology. They were located on a ridge that commanded the entire valley, with natural rock formations providing cover from indirect fire while offering clear fields of fire across multiple approach routes. Elena could see why conventional suppression tactics had failed. The position was essentially a natural fortress that could only be challenged by someone with the skill and equipment to engage at extreme range. But as Elena settled into her shooting position, she began the methodical process of environmental assessment that would determine the accuracy of her shot. The wind was gusty and unpredictable, shifting between calm periods and sudden bursts that would push even perfect shots off target. The atmospheric pressure was continuing to drop as the storm system approached, creating conditions that would challenge even the most advanced ballistic computers.
But Elena had learned to read environmental conditions through senses that no technology could replicate. She could feel the subtle pressure changes that preceded wind shifts, see the barely perceptible movement of vegetation that indicated air current patterns, and sense the atmospheric disturbances that would affect bullet trajectory at extreme range. The scope's thermal imaging revealed heat signatures that made Elena's blood run cold with recognition. The enemy sniper team wasn't using improvised equipment or outdated technology. Their thermal signatures suggested advanced cooling systems and sophisticated camouflage that spoke of professional military training and access to cutting-edge equipment. More disturbing was the realization that the enemy team seemed to be aware of her approach. Elena could see subtle movements in their position that suggested they were tracking her location, possibly through their own advanced surveillance equipment. The tactical situation had evolved from hunter versus prey to a direct confrontation between equals, each side possessing comparable technology and training. Dr. Chen provided technical updates that confirmed Elena's tactical fears. Visquez, electronic signatures suggest the enemy team has access to advanced targeting systems comparable to our own. This engagement is going to come down to human skill rather than technological advantage. Elena adjusted her position slightly, using natural terrain features to break up her thermal signature while maintaining clear sight lines to the enemy position. The chess match had begun, with each side maneuvering for tactical advantage while preparing for a confrontation that would test every aspect of their professional training. The first enemy shot shattered the morning quiet like thunder, its supersonic crack followed immediately by the impact explosion of a bullet striking rock formation 20 meters to Elena's left. The shot had been aimed not at Elena directly, but at her suspected position, a ranging shot designed to force her to reveal her exact location through movement or return fire. Elena remained motionless, understanding that her first movement would likely be her last. The enemy sniper was using professional tactics, attempting to provoke a response that would reveal Elena's position for a follow-up shot. But Elena had been trained for exactly this type of engagement, and her discipline was stronger than her instinct for immediate retaliation. Dr. Chen's voice carried new urgency through the headset. Visquez, electronic signatures suggest the enemy team has access to advanced targeting systems comparable to our own. This engagement is going to come down to human skill rather than technological advantage. Elena adjusted her position slightly, using natural terrain features to break up her thermal signature while maintaining clear sight lines to the enemy position. The chess match had begun, with each side maneuvering for tactical advantage while preparing for a confrontation that would test every aspect of their professional training. The first enemy shot shattered the morning quiet like thunder, its supersonic crack followed immediately by the impact explosion of a bullet striking rock formation 20 meters to Elena's left. The shot had been aimed not at Elena directly, but at her suspected position, a ranging shot designed to force her to reveal her exact location through movement or return fire. Elena remained motionless, understanding that her first movement would likely be her last. The enemy sniper was using professional tactics, attempting to provoke a response that would reveal Elena's position for a follow-up shot. But Elena had been trained for exactly this type of engagement, and her discipline was stronger than her instinct for immediate retaliation. Dr. Chen's voice carried new urgency through the headset. Visquez, electronic signatures suggest the enemy team has access to advanced targeting systems comparable to our own. This engagement is going to come down to human skill rather than technological advantage. Elena adjusted her position slightly, using natural terrain features to break up her thermal signature while maintaining clear sight lines to the enemy position. The chess match had begun, with each side maneuvering for tactical advantage while preparing for a confrontation that would test every aspect of their professional training. The shot's ballistic computer provided firing solutions that Elena modified based on her intuitive understanding of environmental conditions. The wind was gusting unpredictably, but Elena could sense the pattern building toward a period of relative calm that would provide the optimal shooting window. The enemy sniper was operating under the same atmospheric conditions, dealing with the same environmental challenges that affected all long-range shooting.
Elena's breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm of combat shooting, her heart rate dropping to the steady cadence that would minimize body movement during the critical moment of trigger engagement. The rifle felt like an extension of her consciousness, its weight and balance as familiar as her own hands despite the advanced technology integrated into its systems. The target acquisition was perfect. Elena could see the enemy sniper's position with crystalline clarity through the thermal imaging system. The ballistic computer provided firing solutions that accounted for every measurable environmental factor, while Elena's intuitive knowledge compensated for variables that no technology could quantify. But as Elena prepared to engage, Dr. Chen's voice delivered intelligence that changed everything about the tactical situation. Vasquez, we've identified the enemy sniper team. They're not foreign hostiles. They're American deserters with access to classified equipment and intelligence. The revelation hit Elena like a physical blow. She wasn't engaging foreign enemies who had somehow acquired advanced American technology. She was facing former American soldiers who had turned traitors, using their training and equipment against their former comrades. The tactical situation remained the same, but the moral and operational implications were staggering. Morrison's voice cut through the communication channel with command authority. Vasquez, mission parameters unchanged. Neutralize the threat regardless of their origin or former allegiance. Elena understood the order's necessity, but engaging former American soldiers added psychological complexity to an already challenging mission. These weren't foreign enemies whose motivations she couldn't understand. They were people who had received the same training, taken the same oaths, and somehow chosen to portray everything they had sworn to defend. The third enemy shot struck so close that Elena felt the bullet's supersonic wake brush past her face like the breath of death itself. The enemy sniper had nearly found their mark, and Elena realized that hesitation would be fatal regardless of the target's nationality or former allegiance. Elena's shot broke with the clean precision of perfect timing, her trigger control as smooth as silk despite the psychological pressure of engaging former American soldiers. The rifle spoke with authority that echoed across the valley, and Elena immediately tracked the bullet's flight through the scope's thermal imaging system. The impact was visible through the scope as a thermal bloom that marked the end of the enemy sniper's threat to American forces. Elena had delivered a perfect shot under extreme range and adverse conditions, demonstrating the capability that had taken her from kitchen duty to combat deployment in a single day. But even as Dr. Chen confirmed the successful engagement, Elena felt none of the satisfaction that should have accompanied mission completion. The knowledge that she had just killed former American soldiers, regardless of their portrayal, left her with a hollow sense of victory that had nothing to do with professional accomplishment. Morrison's voice carried genuine respect as he acknowledged the mission's success. Outstanding shooting, Private Vasquez. You've neutralized a threat that conventional methods couldn't address. As Elena prepared to extract from the engagement area, she realized that the mission had proven more than just her shooting ability. She had demonstrated tactical awareness, technical competence, and the moral courage to engage enemy forces under the most challenging possible conditions. The kitchen duty assignment that had seemed like career death had instead prepared her for a mission that would define her military future. But Elena also understood that success would bring its own complications. She had proven her capabilities beyond any reasonable doubt, but she had also demonstrated that institutional prejudices and bureaucratic politics could overlook exceptional talent for months. The question was whether her vindication would lead to genuine recognition or simply create new problems with authority figures who had been proven wrong. Dr. Chen began packing the advanced equipment while providing Elena with feedback that confirmed her exceptional performance. Vasquez, that was textbook long-range engagement under adverse conditions. You integrated technological assistance with traditional fieldcraft in ways that maximized both human and equipment capabilities.
As they prepared to return to the forward operating base, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her from stirring oatmeal to neutralizing enemy snipers in the space of a single morning. The path had been unexpected, challenging, and ultimately vindicating, but had it also revealed uncomfortable truths about military culture and the complex relationship between competence and recognition. The helicopter extraction felt like a return to reality after the hyper-focused intensity of combat.
Elena found herself processing not just the successful mission, but the broader implications for her military career and the institutional changes that might result from her public demonstration of capabilities that had been overlooked for 8 months. As Fort Mackenzie appeared on the horizon, Elena realized that she was returning to a base where everyone would know what she had accomplished. The kitchen worker who had been invisible for 8 months was about to become the center of attention in ways that could prove more challenging than combat itself. 6 months later, the morning sun cast long shadows across the newly constructed Advanced Marksmanship Training Center at Fort Mackenzie, its modern facilities a stark contrast to the utilitarian buildings that had defined the base for decades. Elena stood at the entrance to her new domain, watching a class of hand-picked recruits prepare for another day of precision shooting instruction under her direction. The transformation from kitchen duty to chief instructor of long-range operations still felt surreal, like waking up from 8 months of nightmare into a dream too good to be true. Instructor Vasquez, called Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, Elena's newly assigned assistant instructor. Santos was a combat veteran with 3 deployments and a reputation for excellence that had made her selection for the advanced training program both prestigious and competitive. The new thermal imaging equipment arrived this morning. Dr. Chen wants to run calibration tests before the afternoon session. Elena nodded, checking her watch with the automatic precision that had become second nature since her promotion to sergeant and assignment to the training center. The facility had been specifically constructed to replicate the conditions that had led to her successful mission, with ranges extending to 3,000 meters and environmental simulation capabilities that could recreate atmospheric conditions from around the world. The training center represented more than just Elena's personal vindication. It was the military's acknowledgement that exceptional marksmanship required exceptional training, and that talent could emerge from unexpected places if given proper recognition and support. Elena's success had triggered a comprehensive review of personnel assignments and talent identification protocols, leading to reforms that had already identified dozens of overlooked soldiers with specialized capabilities. Dr. Chen emerged from the equipment building, carrying a tablet displaying technical specifications that made Elena's original demonstration equipment look primitive by comparison. The Pentagon's investment in advanced marksmanship technology had expanded dramatically following Elena's mission, with research funding that reflected both the success of human technology integration and the ongoing threat from adversaries with comparable capabilities. Elena, Dr. Chen said, her use of first names reflecting the professional relationship that had developed between them over months of collaboration. The new students are impressive. Their baseline scores suggest we're finally attracting the right caliber of talent for advanced training. Elena reviewed the class roster with satisfaction. The students represented a carefully selected group of soldiers who had demonstrated exceptional potential but lacked the advanced training necessary to realize their capabilities. Many were women and minorities who had been overlooked by traditional selection processes, soldiers whose talents had been discovered through the systematic talent identification protocols that Elena's success had inspired. Among the students was Private Jennifer Walsh, a young soldier from rural Montana whose natural shooting ability had been discovered during routine qualification testing. Walsh reminded Elena of herself at that age, hungry for recognition, determined to prove herself, and possessed of an intuitive understanding of ballistics that couldn't be taught in classrooms.
Walsh, Elena called out as the students assembled for morning instruction, you'll be demonstrating the new thermal imaging integration for today's class. Walsh's face lit up with the same pride Elena remembered feeling during her own training, back when she believed that excellence would automatically lead to recognition and opportunity. Elena had learned through bitter experience that talent alone wasn't enough.
but she was determined to ensure that her students wouldn't face the same institutional barriers that had nearly ended her military career. As the morning training session progressed, Elena reflected on the changes that had transformed not just her own situation, but the entire culture of Fort McKenzie. Colonel Morrison had been promoted to Brigadier General. His willingness to prioritize competence over politics during Elena's mission, earning him recognition from the Pentagon and an assignment to a position where he could implement systematic reforms across multiple installations. Sergeant Mills had been reassigned to a logistics position at a different base, his resistance to Elena's advancement creating too much tension for effective continuation of his kitchen supervisory role. Elena felt no satisfaction in his departure. Mills had been defending a system he believed in, even if that system had been fundamentally flawed in its evaluation of talent and potential. Jake Chen had been promoted to staff sergeant and assigned as Elena's administrative assistant. His loyalty during her kitchen duty period earned him both recognition and an opportunity to advance his own career while supporting Elena's new responsibilities. Their friendship had survived the dramatic change in their relative positions, strengthened by shared understanding of how quickly military fortunes could change. 2 years later, the congressional hearing room buzzed with anticipation as Elena prepared to testify before the House Armed Services Committee about the Advanced Marksmanship Training Program and its impact on military readiness. She wore her dress uniform with quiet pride, the Sergeant First Class stripes and instructor qualification badges representing a journey that had taken her from kitchen exile to national recognition in less than 36 months. Representative Sarah Martinez, the committee chairwoman, opened the hearing with questions about the program's effectiveness and potential for expansion to other military installations. Elena's responses were measured and professional, drawing on statistical data that demonstrated dramatic improvements in long-range capabilities among soldiers who had completed the advanced training. Sergeant Vasquez, Representative Martinez continued, "Your program has identified and trained over 200 soldiers who were previously overlooked by traditional selection processes. What does this suggest about our military's talent identification systems?" Elena had anticipated this question and prepared an answer that balanced honesty with diplomatic sensitivity. "Ma'am, the program's success suggests that exceptional talent exists throughout our military, often in soldiers whose capabilities haven't been recognized or properly developed. Our challenge is creating systems that identify potential rather than just current performance." The hearing provided a platform for Elena to advocate for systematic reforms that went beyond marksmanship training to address broader issues of talent recognition and development. Her testimony drew on personal experience while focusing on institutional improvements that could benefit thousands of soldiers whose potential might otherwise remain unrealized. During a break in the proceedings, Elena received a message that brought news both satisfying and bittersweet. Marcus Thompson, the enthusiastic young private who had delivered the original demonstration orders, had been accepted into officer candidate school based partly on leadership potential identified through the talent recognition protocols that Elena's program had inspired. 5 years later, the dedication ceremony for the Elena Vasquez Center for Advanced Military Training drew dignitaries from across the Defense Department, including General Morrison and Dr. Chen, whose continued collaboration had expanded the program's influence far beyond marksmanship instruction. Elena stood at the podium with the mixed emotions of someone whose personal vindication had become institutional transformation.
"When I was assigned to kitchen duty 5 years ago," Elena began her remarks, "I thought my military career was over. I had forgotten that our military's greatest strength isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our ability to recognize and develop human potential. regardless of where that potential might be found. The audience included dozens of soldiers whose careers had been transformed by programs inspired by Elena's experience. Among them was former Private Walsh, now a captain and instructor at the Army's premier sniper school, whose own success had validated Elena's belief that exceptional talent could emerge from any background if given proper recognition and training. Elena's remarks focused on the institutional changes that had grown from her individual success, talent identification protocols that looked beyond traditional metrics, leadership development programs that valued competence over conformity, and training systems that challenged soldiers to exceed their perceived limitations. But even as she spoke about systematic improvements and institutional reform, Elena's thoughts returned to that morning at Range 7, when she had made the decision to speak up about wind conditions rather than remain safely invisible. That moment of choosing competence over compliance had changed not just her own life, but the careers of hundreds of soldiers whose potential might otherwise have remained hidden. 10 years later, Master Sergeant Elena Vasquez walked through the halls of the Pentagon with the confident stride of someone whose expertise was both recognized and valued at the highest levels of military leadership. Her assignment to the Joint Chiefs of Staff as advisor on advanced training and talent development represented the culmination of a career that had survived institutional prejudice to achieve genuine influence over military policy. The morning briefing focused on global security challenges that required exactly the kind of precision capabilities that Elena's programs had developed. Enemy forces around the world had access to increasingly sophisticated technology, creating threats that could only be countered by soldiers whose skills exceeded traditional training parameters. Elena's recommendations carried the weight of proven success and institutional credibility. The programs she had developed were now standard components of military training across all services, with thousands of soldiers receiving advanced instruction based on principles that Elena had refined through years of trial and refinement. But perhaps more important than the institutional changes were the individual success stories that filled Elena's office files. Letters from soldiers whose careers had been transformed by opportunities they might never have received under the old system, photographs from graduations and promotions, updates on missions successfully completed by soldiers whose potential had been discovered through programs Elena had helped create. Among the most treasured communications was a letter from Dr. Chen, now leading the Pentagon's Advanced Technology Integration Office, describing new equipment developments that continue to push the boundaries of human-technology collaboration in military applications. Their partnership had evolved from a single demonstration to a comprehensive research program that influenced everything from individual soldier equipment to strategic military planning. Jake Chen, now a command sergeant major, served as Elena's liaison to field units implementing the advanced training protocols. Their friendship had not only survived Elena's meteoric rise through the ranks, but had been strengthened by their shared commitment to ensuring that exceptional soldiers received the recognition and opportunities they deserved. 15 years later, Colonel Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the newest Advanced Training Center, watching a new generation of soldiers master skills that had once been considered impossible for all but the most exceptional marksmen. The facility sprawled across hundreds of acres. Its ranges and simulation chambers represented the most advanced training environment ever constructed for military marksmanship and tactics. The students below moved with confidence born of training that integrated cutting-edge technology with fundamental military skills, their capabilities exceeding what Elena herself
possessed during her kitchen duty days. Many were women and soldiers from diverse backgrounds, their presence in elite training programs now routine rather than exceptional, thanks to systematic changes in talent identification and development. Elena's aide, Major Rodriguez, the same Rodriguez who had graciously stepped aside during her original demonstration, approached with the day's briefing materials. His career had flourished under the merit-based evaluation systems that Elena's success had helped inspire,
his professionalism and secure confidence making him an ideal partner for implementing advanced training programs. "Colonel," Rodriguez said, "we've received confirmation that the Senate has approved full funding for expansion of the program to international allied forces. The NATO training initiative will begin next quarter." Elena nodded with satisfaction. The program's influence had grown beyond American military forces to encompass allied nations facing similar challenges in talent development and advanced capability training. The principles that had been proven in Montana wilderness were now being applied to military forces around the world. But even as Elena reviewed the expansion plans, her attention was drawn to a young soldier on the range below whose shooting stance and natural movement reminded her powerfully of herself 20 years earlier. The soldier was clearly gifted, possessed of the same intuitive understanding of ballistics and environmental factors that had defined Elena's own early development. Elena made a mental note to review the soldier's records and ensure that her potential received proper recognition and development. The institutional systems that had once overlooked Elena herself had been transformed, but individual attention and mentorship remained critical components of developing exceptional talent. 20 years later, the retirement ceremony for Brigadier General Elena Vasquez drew attendees from around the world, including former students who now led their own training programs, government officials whose policies had been influenced by her advocacy, and family members who had watched her transform personal adversity into institutional change that benefited thousands of soldiers. Elena's farewell address focused not on her own achievements, but on the soldiers whose potential had been unlocked through programs that prioritized competence over conformity, merit over politics, and individual capability over institutional convenience. Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone whose influence had extended far beyond her own career to reshape fundamental aspects of military culture. 20 years ago, I was stirring oatmeal in a kitchen, convinced that my military career was over, Elena told the assembled crowd. Today, thousands of soldiers are receiving training and opportunities that might not have existed if we hadn't learned that exceptional talent can emerge from the most unexpected places. The ceremony included presentations from soldiers whose lives had been changed by programs Elena had developed, from Dr. Chen announcing new technological developments inspired by their collaboration, and from senior military leaders describing institutional reforms that had improved military readiness while creating more equitable opportunities for advancement. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when a young sergeant approached Elena after the formal ceremony. The sergeant was clearly nervous, her uniform pressed to perfection, but her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to speak. "Ma'am," the sergeant said, "I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to attend advanced training. I was assigned to motor pool duty for 18 months before the talent identification program discovered my capabilities. Now I'm heading to instructor training myself, hoping to help other soldiers whose potential might be overlooked." Elena felt tears threatening as she realized that the cycle was continuing, that the institutional changes she had fought to implement were still creating opportunities for soldiers whose talents might otherwise remain hidden. The young sergeant's story was different in details, but identical in essence to Elena's own journey, from exile to recognition.
25 years later, Elena sat in her study, surrounded by photographs and mementos from a military career that had spanned 4 decades and influenced military training protocols around the world. The Elena Vasquez Centers for Advanced Military Training now operated on 6 continents, their programs continuing to identify and develop exceptional talent among soldiers from dozens of nations. The evening news carried a story about a successful counter-sniper operation in a distant conflict zone, executed by soldiers trained in techniques that Elena had helped develop during her years at Fort McKenzie. The mission's success validated principles that had been proven first on a Montana rifle range and subsequently refined through decades of institutional implementation. Elena's phone rang with a call from her successor, now Colonel Walsh, reporting on the latest class of instructor candidates and their exceptional performance during qualification testing. Walsh's own journey from overlooked private to program leader represented the kind of career transformation that had become routine under the systems Elena had helped create. But even as Elena took satisfaction in the program's continued success, her mind returned frequently to that pivotal morning when she had chosen to speak up about win conditions rather than remain safely invisible. That single decision to prioritize mission success over personal safety had triggered changes that extended far beyond her individual career to influence military culture at the most fundamental levels. The knock out her door interrupted her reflection, bringing news that would provide the perfect conclusion to her lifelong commitment to developing military talent. A young reporter from Military Times had come to interview Elena about the 25th anniversary of the advanced training program, seeking her perspective on the institutional changes that had grown from personal adversity into systematic reform. General Vasquez, the reporter began, her questions reflecting genuine curiosity about the human story behind institutional transformation. When you were assigned to kitchen duty, did you ever imagine that experience would lead to changes that affected thousands of soldiers? Elena considered the question carefully, remembering the despair and frustration of those 8 months when her military career seemed to be ending in ignominy and irrelevance. "I thought I was being punished for speaking truth to power," she said finally. "I didn't realize I was being prepared for a mission that would require every skill I had developed, including the humility and perspective that came from being overlooked and undervalued." The interview continued for an hour, covering topics that ranged from specific training techniques to broader questions about military culture and the ongoing challenge of ensuring that exceptional talent received proper recognition regardless of its source. The interviewer prepared to leave, she asked one final question that captured the essence of Elena's legacy. What advice would you give to soldiers who feel their potential is being overlooked or undervalued? Elena's answer came from the heart, drawing on personal experience that had been transformed into institutional wisdom. Excellence always finds a way to emerge, but sometimes it requires patience, persistence, and the courage to speak up when competence matters more than compliance. The most important shot you'll ever take might not be on a rifle range. It might be the decision to demonstrate your capabilities when others expect you to remain invisible. 30 years later, the documentary film crew arrived at Elena's Montana ranch on a crisp autumn morning that reminded her powerfully of that day at Range 7 when her life had changed forever. The rolling hills and vast sky created a backdrop that seemed appropriate for reflecting on a career that had begun in obscurity and evolved into influence that continued to shape military training around the world. Elena, now in her 70s but still moving with the purposeful grace of a lifelong soldier, welcomed the filmmakers with the warm hospitality that had characterized her approach to mentoring throughout her career. The documentary would premiere on the 30th anniversary of the advanced training program, providing a comprehensive look at institutional changes that had grown from individual adversity into systematic reform.
"The story isn't really about me," Elena told the documentary director as they prepared for the day's filming. "It's about the thousands of soldiers whose potential might have been overlooked if we hadn't learned that exceptional talent doesn't always emerge from expected places or follow traditional paths." The filming included interviews with former students who now led training programs around the world, with Dr. Chen describing technological developments that continued to push the boundaries of human capability, and with senior military leaders explaining how talent identification protocols had been fundamentally transformed by lessons learned from Elena's experience. But the most powerful segment featured current soldiers, describing opportunities that existed because of institutional changes Elena had helped create. Their stories varied in detail, but shared common themes of recognition, development, and achievement that might not have been possible under the old systems of evaluation and advancement. As the sun set over the Montana landscape, Elena reflected on the journey that had taken her from kitchen duty to international recognition, from personal vindication to institutional transformation. The path had been unexpected, challenging, and ultimately rewarding in ways that extended far beyond individual achievement to encompass fundamental changes in how military organizations identified and developed human potential. The final shot of the documentary showed Elena standing on her ranch, looking out over terrain that resembled the landscape where she had made that crucial shot 30 years earlier. Her voiceover provided the conclusion that captured the essence of her life's work and its continuing influence on military training and culture. Every soldier has potential that might not be immediately visible to traditional evaluation systems. Our responsibility is to create opportunities for that potential to emerge, to recognize excellence regardless of its source, and to ensure that competence always takes precedence over convenience. The most important targets aren't always on rifle ranges. Sometimes they're the barriers that prevent exceptional people from achieving their full potential. As the documentary crew packed their equipment and prepared to leave, Elena received a phone call from the current director of the advanced training program. A new class of international students had just completed their qualification testing, achieving scores that exceeded all previous records and validating training principles that had been refined over 30 decades of implementation. Elena smiled as she ended the call, knowing that the cycle would continue, that new generations of soldiers would receive opportunities to excel based on merit rather than politics, competence rather than conformity. The institutional changes that had grown from her individual experience would outlast her own career, creating legacy through the achievements of soldiers whose potential might otherwise have remained hidden. The stars emerged over the Montana sky as Elena prepared for sleep, their light reminding her of that thermal imaging scope that had first shown her the technological possibilities that could enhance rather than replace human capability. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight she could rest with the satisfaction of knowing that her life's work would continue through the soldiers whose potential had been unlocked by systems that valued excellence regardless of its source. Steam rose from industrial-sized pots like ghosts fleeing a battlefield, and Private Elena Vasquez stirred the morning oatmeal with mechanical precision, her calloused hands moving in circles that had become as automatic as breathing. The mess hall clock read 0545, and outside the frosted windows of Fort McKenzie, the Montana wilderness stretched endlessly under a pewter sky that promised snow. She had been stirring oatmeal for 8 months now, ever since her reassignment to kitchen duty following what command had diplomatically termed an incident of insubordination. The metal spoon scraped against the bottom of the pot, a sound that had become the soundtrack to her exile. Elena's dark eyes, sharp as obsidian and twice as cutting, swept across the empty mess hall. In 2 hours, 300 hungry rangers would flood through those doors, expecting hot food and strong coffee, never knowing that their breakfast had been prepared by someone who could thread a needle at 1,000 yards in a crosswind. Her black hair, regulation short but somehow still rebellious in its natural curl, caught the fluorescent light as she moved between the stoves with fluid grace that spoke of years of training her superiors seemed determined to ignore.
"Vasquez," Sergeant Mills's voice cracked like a whip across the kitchen. He emerged from the walk-in freezer carrying a side of beef that would have challenged most men, but Elena knew better than to offer help. Mills had made it clear from day one that kitchen duty was punishment, not partnership. His weathered face, scarred by 2 tours in Afghanistan and a decade of teaching recruits that war wasn't a video game, wore its perpetual scowl like armor. "That oatmeal better not be lumpy like yesterday. Rangers eat lumpy oatmeal, they complain. Rangers complain, I get paperwork. I hate paperwork." Elena nodded without looking up, her jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. She had learned the hard way that speaking in the kitchen only brought more work and longer shifts. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had joined the Rangers to serve her country, to push herself beyond every limit, to become part of something greater than herself. Instead, she spent her days feeding the very soldiers who got to live the life she'd been denied. The industrial coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the air with the rich aroma that would soon wake half the base. Elena moved to check the temperature, her movements economical and precise. Every motion in the kitchen had become a small rebellion, a way to maintain the discipline and excellence that had gotten her through ranger training in the first place. She might be peeling potatoes and scrubbing pans, but she did it with the same attention to detail she had once applied to field stripping a rifle or reading wind patterns at extreme distances. "Morning, sunshine." Corporal Jake Chen appeared in the doorway, his uniform already crisp despite the early hour. Jake had been Elena's closest friend since basic training, the only person on base who still looked at her like a soldier instead of a cautionary tale. His easy smile and genuine warmth had saved her from complete isolation more times than she cared to count. He moved with the confident stride of someone who belonged exactly where he was, sharp, capable, and respected by both his peers and superiors. "Coffee's not ready yet," Elena said, not wanting to get Jake in trouble for fraternizing with the kitchen help. Their friendship had already cost him a promotion opportunity, something Command had made embarrassingly clear during his last performance review. "Wasn't here for the coffee." Jake's voice dropped to a whisper as Mills disappeared into the supply room. "Heard something you might want to know about. There's going to be a demonstration today, some hotshot from the Pentagon, coming to show off new long-range equipment. Word is they're looking for volunteers to help with the presentation." Elena's hand stilled on the coffee filter. For 8 months, she had been invisible, relegated to the background noise of base life. The idea of stepping back into the light, even for a moment, sent electricity through her veins like the first sip of coffee on a cold morning. "What kind of demonstration?" she asked, trying to keep the hunger out of her voice. "Long-range precision shooting. They've got some new scope technology and need someone who can actually hit targets at distance to make it look impressive." Jake glanced toward the supply room. "I know what you're thinking, but Elena, I'm not thinking about anything." The lie came easily, but Jake knew her too well to buy it. The mess hall doors burst open and Private Marcus Thompson stumbled in, his face flushed from running across the base in the pre-dawn cold. Marcus was barely 19, all enthusiasm and energy, the kind of soldier who still believed the army was exactly what he'd seen in recruitment videos. He treated Elena the same respect he showed everyone else, a kindness that had earned him an extra biscuit with breakfast more than once. "Vasquez! Thank God you're here. Sergeant Mills around?" Marcus doubled over, catching his breath. "Got orders from Command. The kitchen's supposed to provide refreshments for some big demonstration today. VIP from DC, apparently." Elena and Jake exchanged glances. The timing felt like fate, or maybe just the universe's way of reminding her that she was still very much on the outside looking in.
Mills emerged from the supply room, carrying cases of canned vegetables, his expression already sour at the interruption to his routine. "What's this about refreshments? Nobody told me about any special duty." Marcus straightened up, producing a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Comes straight from Colonel Morrison's office, Sergeant. Says here the kitchen needs to set up coffee and pastries for a demonstration at Range 7. Some Pentagon brass coming to show off new equipment. Want everything picture perfect." The color drained from Mills's face at the mention of Colonel Morrison. The base commander wasn't known for his patience with subordinates who made him look bad in front of visiting dignitaries. "When?" "Demonstration starts at 1400 hours, set up by 1300. Marcus looked apologetically at Elena. "Sorry, Vasquez. Looks like you're going to miss lunch prep." For the first time in 8 months, Elena smiled genuinely. Missing lunch prep meant she'd be at Range 7. She'd be close to rifles and targets and everything she'd been forced to give up. More importantly, she'd be visible to people who might actually have the authority to remember she was more than just kitchen help. Jake caught her expression and shook his head slightly, a warning she chose to ignore. He understood the hunger in her eyes because he'd seen it every day for 8 months, the look of a soldier slowly dying inside, reduced to a shadow of who she'd trained to become. "Fine," Mills muttered, already calculating how to rearrange his kitchen schedule. "Vasquez, you'll handle the demonstration setup. Thompson, you help with lunch prep. Jen, don't you have somewhere else to be?" As Jake reluctantly headed toward the door, he paused next to Elena. "Just serve the coffee and come back," he whispered. "Don't do anything that'll make things worse." Elena nodded, but they both knew she was lying.
The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Elena assembled coffee urns and arranged pastries with the same precision she'd once applied to mission planning. Her mind, however, was miles away, calculating wind speed and bullet drop, remembering the weight of a rifle in her hands and the perfect silence that came just before squeezing the trigger. She'd been the best shot in her training class, better than men who'd been hunting since childhood, better than soldiers with years of combat experience. Her instructors had called her a natural, blessed with the rare combination of steady hands, sharp eyes, and the mathematical mind needed to calculate impossible shots. That gift had been her ticket into the Rangers, the thing that made her special. It was also the thing that had gotten her banished to the kitchen. As she loaded the coffee urns onto a carty, Elena caught her reflection in the polished steel surface. The woman staring back at her looked tired, older than her 24 years, but her eyes still held that predatory focus that marked a true shooter. 8 months of stirring oatmeal and washing dishes hadn't dulled her edge. If anything, the forced inactivity had sharpened her hunger to prove herself. Range 7 was a quarter-mile from the main base, nestled in a valley that provided natural protection from wind and excellent sightlines for long-distance shooting. Elena had trained there during her brief time as an active ranger, back when she'd believed that excellence and dedication were enough to earn respect. The irony of returning as kitchen help wasn't lost on her, but she pushed down the bitterness. Today wasn't about the past, it was about possibility. As she pushed the cart across the base, Elena noticed the unusual activity. Officers she rarely saw outside the command building were heading toward Range 7, their uniforms pressed to perfection. A black sedan with government plates sat parked near the range entrance, its presence marking this as something more significant than a routine training exercise. The wind picked up as she approached the range, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of weather. Elena automatically noted its direction and strength. 15 miles per hour from the northwest, gusting to 20. Perfect conditions for long-range shooting, if you knew how to read them.
At Range 7, she could see the setup taking shape. A shooting platform had been constructed at the firing line, complete with high-end spotting scopes and equipment she'd never seen before. Downrange targets had been placed at various distances, including what looked like a target at the maximum range of the facility, nearly 2,400 meters. Elena's pulse quickened. 2,400 meters was an extreme shot, the kind that separated true marksmen from merely good ones. She had made shots like that before, back when she was allowed to be a soldier instead of kitchen help. The target shimmered in the distance like a mirage, calling to something deep in her soul. "Coffee station goes over there." Sergeant Mills appeared beside her cart, pointing to a spot well back from the shooting line. "Stay out of the way, keep the coffee hot, and don't talk to anyone important." As Elena began setting up the refreshment station, she kept one eye on the demonstration preparations. The Pentagon representative turned out to be a woman in her 50s, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that spoke of military bearing despite her civilian clothes. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Jake, had the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. The quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades proving herself in rooms full of men who underestimated her. The new thermal imaging integration allows for target acquisition in conditions that would have been impossible with previous generation equipment, Dr. Chen was explaining to a small group of officers, including Colonel Morrison. Combined with the ballistic computer's real-time wind compensation, even average shooters should be able to achieve unprecedented accuracy at extreme range. Elena's hands moved automatically, arranging pastries and checking coffee temperatures while her attention focused entirely on the technical discussion. The equipment being demonstrated was generations ahead of what she'd trained with, the kind of technology that could turn a good shot into a legendary one. Of course, the equipment is only as good as the shooter using it. We'll need someone with genuine long-range capability to provide a proper demonstration. Colonel Morrison nodded toward a group of rangers who had been selected to participate in the demonstration. Elena recognized them all. Competent soldiers, decent shots, but none with the kind of extreme range experience needed to truly showcase the equipment's potential. The colonel's eyes swept the group, clearly calculating which of his men would make the best impression on the Pentagon representative. "Sergeant Rodriguez has our best long-range scores this quarter," Morrison said, indicating a veteran sniper with multiple deployments and a solid reputation. Rodriguez stepped forward, his confidence evident but not cocky. Elena had trained with him briefly and she knew he was skilled, but she also knew his limitations. He was good at 800 meters, competent at 1,200, but 2,400 was beyond his proven range. As the group moved toward the shooting platform, Elena found herself drifting closer, drawn by the magnetic pull of her former life. She told herself she was just refilling coffee cups, but her feet carried her to where she could see every detail of the equipment setup. The rifle was a thing of beauty, a custom build that probably cost more than most soldiers made in a year. The scope was unlike anything Elena had seen, its multiple lenses and digital displays suggesting capabilities that bordered on science fiction. This wasn't just equipment. This was the future of precision shooting, and she was watching from the sidelines like a spectator at her own funeral. The wind had shifted slightly, now coming from the west-northwest at 12 miles per hour with gusts to 18. The temperature had dropped 3 degrees, which would affect bullet velocity. The atmospheric pressure was dropping ahead of the approaching storm system, another factor that would impact long-range accuracy. These were calculations Elena could make instinctively, adjustments that came as naturally as breathing. But she was invisible here, a ghost haunting her own former life, watching others prepare to do what she could do better while she served them coffee.
As Rodriguez settled into position behind the rifle, Elena noticed something that made her heart skip. The scope's windage adjustment was wrong, calibrated for the conditions from an hour ago, not the current wind pattern. At 2,400 meters, that small error would translate to a miss of several feet, potentially embarrassing everyone involved and failing to showcase the equipment's true potential. She looked around desperately, hoping one of the range officers would catch the error, but they were all focused on the demonstration's ceremonial aspects rather than the technical details. Rodriguez was a good soldier and a decent shot, but he was used to having spotters and range officers handle the complex calculations for extreme distance shooting. Elena's hand tightened on the coffee pot she was holding. She could speak up, could quietly mention the wind adjustment to one of the officers, but that would mean revealing just how closely she'd been following the technical discussion. It would mean admitting she understood the equipment better than she should, drawing exactly the kind of attention Mills had warned her to avoid. But watching a demonstration fail because of a preventable error felt like watching someone stumble when she could have warned them about the obstacle. Elena had spent her entire military career believing that excellence mattered more than politics, that competence would eventually overcome prejudice. 8 months of kitchen duty had taught her otherwise, but old habits died hard. The internal debate raged for precious seconds while Rodriguez made his final adjustments and Dr. Chen prepared to begin the official demonstration. In the distance, that 2,400-meter target waited like a judgment, ready to reveal whether this moment would be triumph or embarrassment. Elena's decision crystallized in that instant, born of the same instinct that had made her an exceptional soldier in the first place. She couldn't stand by and watch a mission fail when she had the knowledge to prevent it, even if speaking up might cost her what little standing she had left. But as she opened her mouth to quietly alert someone to the wind adjustment error, a commotion near the government sedan caught everyone's attention. A second car was approaching Range 7, and from its urgent pace and the way it bypassed normal base traffic patterns, this was clearly an unscheduled arrival that was about to change everything. The demonstration hadn't even begun, and already Elena could sense that this day was going to be unlike any other in her 8 months of exile. The question was whether it would finally offer her a chance at redemption or simply provide a more public stage for her continued fall from grace.